Let's return to the tragic killing of Anne Widdecombe. Her death was announced on Friday morning, but as we know, police believe she was killed at some point around 12:30 in the afternoon on Wednesday. What we've known until now about that day is that she gave a live interview to Talk around 8 o'clock that morning and was liaising via WhatsApp with the Channel 5 researcher around lunchtime. The last message that she read was sent at 12:19 p.m. But in fact, she gave an interview shortly before that, just after midday, to a Christian speech radio station, TWR-UK. The interview lasted just under 10 minutes and was recorded, not live, with the original intention that it would be played out later that week. Well, Times Radio has been given the recording of that interview. We've been granted permission by Anne's family to play an excerpt because, as you'll hear, it demonstrates Anne's robust and lively political views and how much she cared about what she believed in. In a moment, we'll talk to James Maidment-Fullard, the broadcaster who interviewed her. Anne had been a guest on TWR many times, and he knew a great deal about both her political interests and her strong Christian faith. But first, let's hear part of what she said. Anne was in typically ebullient form, defending Nigel Farage, praising his leadership and backing his decision to call the Clacton by-election. She was then asked by James what she made of the pressure on her party leader.
Several parties say Farage is trying to duck and dive around the rules. What specific rule or processes do you believe is unfair to him?
Well, I think, first of all, the very long drawn-out nature of this, which, as I say, has been constantly accompanied by press speculation. And also the fact, he was answering to the Standards Committee for one thing, and then suddenly another one came along, again applying to the time before he became an MP, indeed at a time when he wasn't even an active politician. And he probably thinks, where is this going to end? Let's bring an end to it. Let's bring this to a head. Let's put it to the people to see what they think of all of this. There has been a game now for a very long time, a game of personal destruction, not just for Nigel, for lots and lots of politicians have faced this. What Clinton once described as the politics of personal destruction. And I think that another thing is, and Nigel is going to say, well, don't always expect people just to writhe in your coils. They may actually turn on you, and I'm now setting the example of that and leading the way. The other thing is the register has become a joke. Now, the register used to be an extremely serious instrument, which meant that you declared anything which might have any impact on the way you vote. That was the intention of the register. It was a good one. You need to know. But it then got to the point where you had to declare all your earnings, regardless of whether they influenced anything. I mean, my standard joke at the time to the then registrar, who was Elizabeth Filton, was, you're expecting me to declare the fee I received from appearing with Basil Brush. Is that because you expected it to influence my vote on punting? It just, she was so post-faced she didn't even see the joke. But it is so, it became a nonsense. And then it got to the stage, when Harriet Harman was leader of the House, it reached the stage where you had to declare every bunch of flowers you had. Literally, I'm serious, And it's departed from its original purpose. It's become a game so that people try to see, what you might not have declared. You might have decided you didn't have to declare. Other people, like I did, will declare every last darn thing, even though it's complete nonsense, like the fee with Basil Brush, because just to do it. So I no longer take the register seriously in the way that I used to. And the other thing is standards and privileges. Before Tony Blair came in, it was a very, very senior committee of the House of Commons, peopled by very senior people whose careers were behind them. So they owed absolutely nothing to the whips or to anybody else, who had a really good understanding of Parliament and how it worked and how influence worked, and understood all of that because they'd been there, for a very long time. Blair changed all that. And I think, I don't have the same respect for this committee as once I had. Let me give you a very good example. When Boris was being subjected to an investigation, they simply changed the rules. Now, the rules said you mustn't knowingly mislead Parliament, which we would all say, yep, that's right. Yeah, they changed it. It doesn't matter whether you knew or not. If you supply wrong information to Parliament, you're guilty. Well, that is a nonsense. Absolute nonsense. One of many reasons why, as I say, I no longer take either the Register or the committee as seriously as I certainly did when I was in Parliament.
That was Anne Widdecombe there in an interview recorded just after midday last Wednesday. James Maidment-Fullard was the man putting the questions to her. He joins me now. Morning, James.
Morning, Stig. Nice to be with you.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. You've interviewed her many times. Why did you keep coming back to her?
Oh, she was robust, she was lively, she knew her topic incredibly well, and on top of all of that, she was able to express her opinion in a way that just made her really compelling to listen to. When she was live, she was a passionate interviewee, but when I spoke to her off air, she was always incredibly kind and compassionate. And just before I pressed record on that interview that you've just heard a clip from, she asked me how my family was, and that part of her character just gave me the impression that she cared deeply about whoever it was that she was speaking to.
And how did you feel when you found out that you'd been one of the last people to speak to her?
Well, I was looking at my phone when the alert came in on Friday at 6:30 in the morning, and I just remember staring at the alert thinking that there'd been some kind of mistake. And then as the story developed and the timeline became clearer, I was just deeply saddened by it. And to be honest, Stig, I think probably like many of your listeners, I'm just still trying to come to terms with it all.
And you've let the police know about this recording, haven't you? You've said to them that this took place just after midday on the day she died, and that could be part of the timeline that's necessary for this.
Absolutely, and they have all my details, and of course if they need anything else from me, I'm sure they'll be in touch.
I'm struck by the fact that you're a Christian broadcaster on a Christian radio station, and her faith has been mentioned a bit, but not necessarily it's the most important thing in people's minds, but it was probably very, very important in her mind, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You may or may not know, TWR-UK has been broadcasting Christian content in the UK for many years now, and Anne was always very aware of that. I think what struck me over the years was how readily she engaged with us. If we asked her to comment on a story, it was rare that she would turn us down. And throughout my career, I've interviewed her on a whole range of issues, but the conversations that stayed with me were ones like the persecuted church, the sanctity of life, and the place of Christian conviction in public life. I always felt she was forthright and articulate on air, but off air she was just as sincere, thoughtful, warm, and very open as well about her faith in Jesus. And those repeated interactions always left me with a clear impression that she was not only a committed public servant, but political life was never really the thing that defined her. Her faith defined her. I'm absolutely convinced that she was ever in a position where she'd had to choose between her politics and her relationship with Jesus, she would have chosen Jesus every single time, because Jesus was the anchor of her life and it shaped the way that she saw the world.
That's an interesting perspective, because we've been talking an awful lot about the politics over the last few days. It's very important to hear that other side of things. James, great to speak to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
That's James Maidment-Fullard there. The man, as he was just saying there, he then gets he talks to her on Wednesday afternoon and then gets the note saying that he was one of the last people to speak to her.
Yeah, really sad, and nice to have somebody on to reflect about her life who knew her and spoke to her over a number of years.
And the thing you mentioned about how she would come on, I've worked at various radio stations in my time, and the thing about Anne Widdecombe was, if there was an issue and she had an opinion on it, and she would genuinely come on and express that opinion. And if you then push back at it, and I used to do phone-in shows, and if you push back at her, she was very up for that. She quite liked the idea of coming on and having a view, and I think she was very well known in media circles for being that person who would say yes and come on. And interesting that she'd do it with a Christian radio station. That's TWR-UK. But
also clearly one of those people in politics, and I feel like they may be becoming shorter in supply perhaps, who can have a disagreement about a particular issue but leave that where it stands and not carry that on into what happens off mic, in the sense that you're not enemies.
You're just people disagree.
Exactly. You're just people doing a job, and ultimately it's no reflection on.
Well, and I just wonder whether that's probably links us back to one of the things we were talking about. We live in this sort of world of public discourse, which is a sewer in lots of respects. But a lot of it is we don't believe in anyone else's good faith, and it's very difficult to say you and I can have a fundamental disagreement about something that really matters, but it doesn't mean we're bad people.
Well, some people do. I mean, Anne Widdecombe did, and there are people around in politics who still do, but I feel like they're shorter in supply than they were
and that's
once.
Probably right.
It's 8:45. It's been another night of American attacks on Iran and the usual response by Iran with strikes on American allies in the region. But the context for those attacks has changed. President Trump now says he will impose a 20% levy on all cargo that travels through the Strait of Hormuz. Trump said the US will act as a guardian